Thank you very much. It was great listening to the speaker. It brought to mind of how far technology has brought us, but I have a challenge for you all that I wanted to say. And if you've lost a credit card recently, you can see how technology can be a challenge. So I recently lost a credit card, and my Netflix account, my Apple Music account, my Comcast account, my AT&T account, all were pinging me saying, your credit card's expired. And I didn't remember my password. I mean, because you never use these accounts on a frequent basis. I don't remember my password. So my technology solution for you all today is make your new password incorrect. And that way, you'll always get a reminder when you put in the wrong password and it says, your password is incorrect. You can get it in. It's the only way I can remember them all. Other than that, I can never remember those passwords. So we have a great panel today, and I wanted to give a little intro to the panel and at least seed the topic. We have some great leaders here to talk about the impact of technology on the business of engineering, and I'd like to kind of seed it with a slide that we're going to put up there, if I could. So I can't see the slide, but what I hope to say is that, is it up there? There it is. So I wanted to look and say, hey, in our business, what are the things that are changing? And what are things in technology that are changing? And you can see in the upper left-hand corner, the use of drones is big there. You have an automated connected vehicle. You have cybersecurity. You have visualization, LiDAR scanning of entire highway interchanges. You have artificial intelligence. You have smart cities. You have the wonderful iPhones. You have our two main product vendors that our software uses, and Bentley and Autodesk. All of these things have changed technology, and now we have this new 5G technology that's moving forward. So these things are going to all impact our firms, unlike what you heard earlier that are going to impact our lives. These impact our firms today and hopefully tomorrow. So what I looked at real quickly is that in our business, in my particular business, drones are already doing things that we used to do in person. And they'll do everything from inspection. We're doing high-level surveying with drones. We're doing quality control, quality assurance, and LiDAR scanning. And they are clearly something that can be done today. They don't replace humans, but what they do is minimize the risk that humans are put in. And so when you look at that bridge inspection there, when people are hanging under that bridge on a snooper, if a drone can minimize the amount of time they're in that travel lane, the safer they'll be. So we see that being used. So that's my spiel on that. And what I wanted to do is have these leaders tell you about what impacts that technology has had on their firms, and then we'll talk about the future when they're done talking about the impacts. So Rick, you're up.
Thanks, Terry. Go ahead and switch over. Okay, so here I was last night coming down here from Chicago at the airport, waiting for my flight to Orlando, and I see a guy. He's got, of course, a handheld device. Good-looking guy, nice guy. Seemed like he fit in pretty well with everyone else because I noticed everyone else had a handheld device, and of course, it's an iPhone. And he was paying probably right around $350 for his flight, I would say. Is that about right, John? About $350 to go from Chicago to Orlando. Okay, and in fact, if you look through the crowd, even here, if you don't have a phone close by, you're kind of thought of as being a geek a bit. Everyone has a phone. You're always connected. Okay, so of course, you know what's going to happen. You go back 35 years and you take a look at what's on the top left-hand corner. And so 35 years ago, I'm at an airport looking at a guy, or maybe it was me, I don't know, and I had a handheld device in my hand. And of course, what was it? It was a calculator. But from afar, it looks about the same. But of course, I looked like a geek at an airport. And that just shows the way the times are. However, what did I pay for an airline ticket back then? About $350. It was the same price. And I know we're not really talking about the airline industry, but it just shows some of the concerns with technology or with pricing with the market. When you think about that, you're paying the same price for an airline ticket, and you're paying 10 to 12 times more for a car from what it was back in the 80s. And then the bottom two are, of course, pictures of where we are today, cloudless technology, and then, my first computer, portable computer. I'll give someone $20 if they know the name of that computer on the bottom left-hand corner. Who said Osborne? Very good. All right, $20 afterwards. If you think about it, actually, that can go to ACEC as part of my dues for the Capital Club. How's that? So when you think about it, this portable computer, it was almost like carrying a sewing machine. And the Osborne, it lasted 3 years. IBM just torched it as far as technology was concerned, and then it was considered obsolete. But that was the first one that we all started off with right after school. Okay, so where are we now? Four quick deals. First of all, with our firm, we're really big into 3D modeling. It's a totally different dynamic than what we used to be because, of course, our preferred delivery was plan sheets, of course. And with plan sheets, you could just seal it, say, hey, I'm the PE. Please don't scale the plans, but you can use our plans. And now we have 3D models that we're using. And this is kind of a bad graphic of a roadway model that many of our engineers and architects use 3D modeling. And in fact, the client now asks for the 3D model. And that's probably one of the challenges, even of ACEC, of describing of how do we seal a 3D model. So that's something from a technology perspective we're really trying to figure out. You know, the second area, probably similar to what Terry does in the field, is the whole area of field documentation. The use of tablets. We have one made by Pavia Systems, and I'm not sure if they're here at this conference, but Headlight has been tremendous because it takes out the human error. You think about the way that we all used to do with the field documentation. You have your field book, and then you'd write it in it, and then usually at night or on the weekends, you're taking something from the field, and you're putting into some form of applied usage and all that. And nowadays, you're totally connected to anyone, from the client to the contractor to your office, real life stuff that you can take a look at. You can take pictures of what's in the field, you can provide the documentation, and you can really create a very effective movement of design. The third area, and I'll just spit into this in one moment, is the area of enterprise systems, of having everything that we do from a database provision connected. I would give our firm, I don't know about yours, Terry, but about a B. We use Deltek systems with a lot of the stuff that we do, from Vision and our CRM system and our accounting and our invoicing, but it's not truly SAP or Oracle type system. That's something that we really have to try to figure out, and maybe many of you are more advanced in this, but that's probably one of the challenges for us. And then finally, the graduates that we bring in. I feel upbeat about our graduates. I think we have some of the finest universities throughout the U.S. that we bring in some of the best, but what we offer to them now has to compete with the Googles or the startups. And so we have to be tech savvy as we see it. We want graduates who are very visual. Much different, I think, in 30 years ago, those people that would be comfortable in looking at their shoes in public or whatever, or standing behind a drafting table. And so that is one thing that I think is, I'm very upbeat as far as our graduates that are coming out of school. I think they will have very nice employment over the next several decades. And then last one for me is more of a commercial about virtual reality. We actually have a booth set up, and I would ask that if any of you have not done VR in the past, it'll bring you back to when you were 10 years old or 15 years old. And we do see this as delivery of the future of how we present ourselves to the public, not just to win jobs, but to do jobs. Of course, the whole idea with virtual reality, there's two areas of interest. Number one, you want to make it as photorealistic as possible. That would be one. But what's probably more important, you want to connect. You want a personal experience. And just like Andy Valente, who you'll meet in our booth, he's there when you put your headsets on, that's purely a personal connection to your project. And that's what we think that this profession is really moving towards. Okay, makes sense?
Yes.
John?
John? Same question. So Rick, you got $4,980 more to go to get to the Capitol Club. You're going to get there. You're going to get there, 20 at a time. John,
per year.
go for it. Same question.
Oh,
You
these
can
are
skip on that.
okay. All right. Well, my first slide's missing here, but that's okay. First of all, I have to apologize. I thought I was brought in to talk about the impact of technology on golf. And I was very prepared to talk about shafts, driver heads, so I'll try and recover from that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about, instead of the technical advances that are affecting engineering, technology and how it affects our ability to run our company. So as Dave said in my intro, we've grown at pretty rapid growth. We've grown from about 200 people in 5 offices in 4 states to over 600 people actually in 32 offices in 16 states over the last 7 or 8 years. And most of that through acquisition. So in addition to looking and staying on top of emerging technologies that affect the practice of engineering, we've really had to focus on improving and right-sizing our systems, and including trying to automate our processes, business processes, as much as we can. So this rapid growth has, created several challenges for us, both from technology but also process. We're a firm believer in not buying new technology just because it's new. It's got to fit the needs of our business. So evaluating, and we are using drones and other for engineering, but evaluating new technologies to run our business versus right-sizing and working on our existing systems is kind of a moving target for us. So some of the things that are affecting us or challenges from a technological perspective of running our company are the rapid onboarding of employees and the systems that have come with these merged firms, melding IT staff who worked for a small firm on small systems into a national system that's working on higher level systems, consolidating servers, software, hardware from the merged firms. So it's been an interesting process for us because some of our systems are not scalable. We've been a long-time user of Deltek Vision for both accounting and CRM, but we did not have a robust process for supporting our human resources initiatives. So we went down the road and purchased a human resources information system. I know there's a wide range here, as Rick said. There's going to be companies that are way ahead of us, but I thought it would be interesting just to see how it's affected us as we've grown. So we bought Oracle Fusion, and it's a work in progress for us. I personally don't find it to be very user-friendly. However, it can be. We have our programmers working on dashboards, not only to make it more friendly or easier to use by our employees, but also so it can talk to our other systems. We're in the same boat where we don't have an enterprise system that does everything. We've gone down the path of trying to take the best of what's available and then use our internal staff to get them to work together. And that is an interesting thing when we talk about future technologies, about people like Deltek buying an HR company, buying Newforma, buying and trying to become one-stop shops. So that's the path we've been going down. It's good to have good technology tools, but they don't do you any good unless you can make you more efficient and help with your business operations. So we've always been, even when we were smaller, able to automate processes. We've got a very robust intranet system that I think at this point has over 400,000 lines of code, and it's used for many things within our company. Probably the most powerful is a staffing database. We chose not to use the module from Deltek, but we created our own that projects ebbs and flows in our staffing going forward. Helps us share work, so we're not hiring in one office when we're, there's somebody underutilized in another office that could be helping. So, but with this increased need for or desire to automate our processes and become a more efficient company, and really to act like a company that's 600 people and not 9 little smaller firms bolted together, we decided that we didn't really have a person. We have very talented IT staff, but we didn't have a person responsible solely for making sure our processes were consistent, that we're staying on top of technology. So we created a role that we call a Chief Process and Innovation Officer. So a little different take than a CIO. So her responsibilities, in addition to overseeing our IT staff, she oversees our quality management system. She also is responsible for making our processes work and our information systems talk. As in our company, as we've grown, the accounting people kind of led us down the Deltec path. Our HR staff led us down the HRIS path, but nobody was really looking at all these systems and how they're going to work together and duplicating data and improving our processes. So that's the role of our Chief Process and Innovation Officer. So once we got her in place, this is about 2 years ago now, we came up with several strategic initiatives. One was to develop a strategic plan solely for information technology, which we've never had. Of course, we've used strategic planning like everybody else over the years, and it would talk about IT. But this was the focus of this was really to look at emerging technologies, where do we want to be when they come, but also to develop a growth plan for our staff, because we've got these people that worked in smaller systems, and now we're trying to run a larger company of 600 people. What are we going to do to get them to where we need to be able to do that? I mentioned that our CPIO oversees our online quality management system. We have automated that. We created an online system where we can create quality management plans for every project in the company. And this helps us ensure that happens, and it can be as simple as one page for a small project or multiple pages with multiple checklists for larger projects. And then we ask our PMs to make sure that the contract and the scope are in a folder along with all the documentation that they have to show that they followed this quality management plan. And then our Director of Quality, who reports to our CPIO, can audit this. The other thing is, as we've grown, we've elected to stay with geographic profit centers in lieu of going to practice-based centers. This poses a challenge to us in getting best practices shared and technology. So what we did was we created technical groups for each of these practices. And they meet quarterly via video conference across the company. But where the technology really fits in is we've created SharePoint sites to support each of these technical groups. And it has a chat function that allows them to communicate more efficiently. It has a calendar that lets them know when their meetings are. It's got essentially the skill sets of every member of that practice in the company. So if you need special expertise within that, you know where to go. And then also it's a repository for all reference material and resources for that group so that they can all access the same material. So that's helped us go down that path. I know there's no right way to organize the company. Some are matrix-based, some are geographic-based, some are practice-based. We chose to stay geographic-based just because we believe it, at our size company, it provides the most accountability within an office in terms of utilization and other things like that. Other things we've done is we created a project management advisory group. So we've handpicked several of our best project managers from across the country, and they work with our CPIO to automate processes that project managers need to use every day. Some of these things are like real-time accounting on their dashboards, automated construction cost estimates for projects, automated setup and archival for projects, online training, and things like that. So just things, our real focus has been, in addition to the things affecting our engineering business, how do we become this more efficient company? How do we act like a 600-person company instead of a bunch of small companies? So that's been a big part of where we're at in terms of technology right now.
Thank you, John. Sandy, your turn. Tell us about things in your firm.
Thanks. So yeah, so I don't have any slides. So it's actually really interesting listening to Martin speak here this morning a little bit. I think as I look at the graphs that he put up there, I feel like our company is an absolute microcosm of what he was showing, especially as it relates to workforce and automation. So thinking about that a little bit, our company's 90 years old, had a lot of diversity over the years, but had a really interesting period when the latest recession happened. And the rebuild of the company after that period has changed us tremendously. So what I'm talking about is we're actually doing more business now with fewer people. That's a good thing and a bad thing. And so when I think about the business we're in, the technology has been excellent for a lot of things, but we are still a human capital business. There's no doubt about it. We are absolutely a relationship business. And so one of the things that we've spent a lot of time on as it relates to technology is the changing way we are doing design has changed our teams. So prior to a lot of the technology, Civil 3D, all the different design modeling software, we tended to have teams of, say, a designer, drafter, or engineer. A lot of what we're doing now is an engineer and a designer. Or even on the survey side, we used to run 3-man crews all the time. Now we're running 2-man or sometimes 1-man with a robot. And so the interesting thing, I think for me, as somebody responsible for making sure we think about how the business is moving forward, is really thinking about the effect on human capital. One of the things that I've found, and I don't know if anybody else has ever seen this, is that the technology we're using is fantastic for a lot of things. But I find sometimes that people tend to take for granted that it's always right, and they don't necessarily use common sense or the brain power we're given to really think through the wide range of design solutions that can come up. So I find it fascinating, actually, that we use technology in the way that we do, and we will continue to do that. But I really still believe that we have to spend time thinking about how to do things well and right because of the fact that we are a client-based relationship business. So when I think about new grads, there are some amazing, really amazing young people coming to the workforce, and I think you're absolutely right that they're looking for that exciting opportunity. And unfortunately, we're not a Google, and we're not a startup, and we're not we're going to make $1 billion overnight. So we still have people that we have to train and teach that longevity matters, that thinking through things matter, that the reward in our business of design comes from building something interesting and exciting. And so we can use technology to do that, but we do spend a lot of time thinking about and talking about training, problem solving, working on teams, working across the board to use the technology as a boost to do things well, but not as a replacement for what I believe is good teamwork and good opportunity for people to grow and learn from each other by really engaging with one another and what comes out of their brains. So I don't know if anybody else finds that, but that's something I think actually a lot about. And it's exciting and yet a little challenging at times to get people to think that they can't just rely on the technology alone without really expanding what they do in teamwork.
Thanks, Sandy. So I wanted to ask the panel, we've talked a little bit about the past, and we wanted you to kind of put on your crystal ball gazing eyeballs and look into the future, and if you could tell me and tell us about what you view as the future technology trends are. If you could leave some pearls of wisdom, we'd love to hear them, and Rick, we'd love to start with you on that.
All right, so thanks, Terry. Need my glasses for this one, because I do have this hypothesis, if you don't mind. So the one gentleman that talked about autonomous vehicles, if I could talk about that. For our business, we're all about transportation. We're always trying to figure out, okay, what's the trend in the airline industry, in the car industry, in freight rail, passenger rail, movement of goods and services. And I really think that the most dramatic change will be in autonomous vehicles. Okay, so here's how it works. Right now, there's 3 things that are going on that are combining to make a dramatic effect. First of all, you have the Ubers. You have the Ubers, the whole transportation providers that are working with us. And what it has brought out is the whole fact that people are comfortable with other people driving them. On-demand driving, especially in the urban areas. And as competition increases, the quality of that experience will increase. So that's number 1 in my thought. Number 2 is the electric vehicles. Almost every company now, auto dealership or manufacturer, sorry about that, is into some type of a hybrid or electric vehicle. And of course, that is of interest because that will be a dramatic change with the whole gas and oil industry. if it moves on that way. So that's number 2. And the third thing is the autonomous vehicle. And the whole reason for that is, of course, the safety. Our accidents, 90% of our accidents are because of human error. Human error, so that's, of course, the idea behind that. Okay, so now you have these 3 technologies that are kind of merging together to create an idea. It's called a TOS, Transportation as a Service, TOS. Or in your terms, it's this cheap, reliable, on-demand transportation. So that's my premise. So now if this happens, let's say 15 years, 20 years, or whatever, what will happen? There's 4 perspectives that I was kind of looking at and researching a little bit. Number 1 is, of course, the auto and fuel industry. If you think about it from a numbers perspective, TOS vehicles, as I am going to call them, are used probably 10 times more than an average vehicle. We use our cars about 4% of the time. Sometimes people in Chicago may use it more because they're commuting a longer distance, or in LA like Mary and all that kind of stuff. But these vehicles are going to be used more often as we see it. There's going to be less vehicles also. There's going to be less ownership of vehicles. And so with that, of course, what will the auto manufacturers do? And then the whole thing with gas and oil and all that kind of stuff. What will happen with that industry? You know, the second area is the whole infrastructure, the road systems and all that. We have safer vehicles, especially in urban areas. What do we do with the roads? Do we need as many lanes? Can they be thinner? They need to be maintained better, so there's probably an opportunity for some consulting and all that kind of stuff. But, so we're trying to figure that whole thing out. Safety. If 90% factor for safety, if we have now more of autonomous vehicles, what will the insurance companies do? And so there's a whole dynamic there. And then finally, from a cost perspective, of course, if you go down the electric path and you go down autonomous vehicles, then the whole structure for financing these projects is totally thrown out. You know, there's no such thing then as an MFT. You know, so with that, I know I'm just kind of bringing forth a whole idea, but I would say, to answer your question, Terry, that's probably the most dramatic effect that we're really trying to figure out at this point.
You know, I can honestly say that I got my first request from one of our employees to put in a Tesla plug in my parking lot for our headquarters building. I said, Tesla plug?
Yeah.
I said, I'm still trying to figure out my password to Netflix, and you want a Tesla plug.
Incorrect.
Yeah.
Incorrect.
Incorrect.
Incorrect. I got that.
So, John, same question.
Is that an
Future
entry-level
trends.
engineer?
Yes.
Because you guys must pay good.
Yeah.
I guess
You do. You do.
staying on my theme more of the technology of business, I think one of the things that we've got our eyes on is the software as a service move that's going on right now. Started out obviously with cloud storage, which is pretty popular, but now you've got MicroStation, Bentley, Autodesk, who have software as a service out there for you, and it's I guess it's great in the fact that it cuts down your need for servers, it's easier to back up your material and things like that, but you're also losing, I guess, control. You know, some of these companies won't even let you buy a license. And so as we go down this path, you know, it's going to be interesting as we give up licenses that we used to own, and now we're basically at their mercy once you've committed to one of these companies to use their service. And then once you're there, they can just keep jacking up the cost. So how do we control costs going forward as this becomes a very real part of our, I mean, it's emerging now, but it's coming across the board.
Sandy, future trends.
Yeah, so Terry and I actually talked about this the other day. I think one of the interesting things that's going on, I think for all of us, is this idea of cybersecurity. You know, we all have a tremendous amount of data that we either own in some fashion regarding our employees or regarding our clients' data. And we have found a lot over the last decade or so of increase in people trying to get into our systems. So even just talking amongst the employees about vulnerabilities with our own systems in the last few years, we've found all kinds of situations where people are trying to send fake emails, trying to get us to click on links, and they're getting more and more sophisticated. So where it used to be that, we would warn everybody, don't click on that link. I think everyone knows that these days. Now we're getting things like what look like fake Dropbox files. We're getting things that look like DocuSign for electronic document signatures, things like that. And so the level of diligence that I believe we have to have now is exponentially increasing, as Martin mentioned. And so it's a challenge because it's not so much that we can't stay on top of it from the IT standpoint. It's a little bit more with employees and making sure that they're diligent in recognizing that they have to be very cautious with what they do, and that in their busyness of their day and their need to try and get things done in a timely way, that they don't lose sight of the importance of that. So we've spent a lot more money, a lot more time on kind of making sure that what we've got in place is protective not only of our systems, but of the data that we have with our clients as well. So I don't mean at all any way to sound negative on technology, that's not the case, but what's happening is as we get more and more technologically savvy, we're also finding that we have to be more and more diligent on the back end to make sure that we're not in a situation where we shut down our servers or do something bad because we've clicked on the wrong file. So it's a big challenge and cost for us as we budget every year.
Just to hop onto that real quick, one of our recent DPC meetings, we were asking people how many people got an email asking the CFO to wire, it's from me to the CFO to wire these funds to this account. And it was amazing how many firms have gotten that, and a couple actually fell to it. So along those lines, we also have to have the processes in place and the dual approvals and things like that to make sure that we don't fall prey to some of that.
True. A question on the 3D modeling, mainly for you, Rick. When we first got into the engineering CAD business, we went to our clients and said, we're going to be really more productive, and we're going to put things on a computer. It used to be manually drafted. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but we would like for you to pay us a little bit more because we're going to give you this automated product that you're going to be able to use for all these fantastic things. And I sense that this is happening again in our environment, especially when it comes to BIM modeling and 3D modeling. And so I'd be interested in your perspectives on how does one sell a 3D model to a cost-sensitive client to obviously have the engineering firm make the sale, if you could, Rick.
Well, for us, I don't know if other people have had the same history, but we don't get paid more. Unfortunately, the way that the industry is going is that this is just the way it's going to be. In fact, what's at times included in the agreement when you sign up for this, for your job, is that you have to provide the 3D model for the client so that they can hand it to the contractor through BIM or Revit or whatever to use it. And so that's why I pointed to the fact that this is very curious, and we are concerned with this because, of course, once we hand it over, we're not the users of it. And, you think about we'll say a normal roadway design or whatever on a plan set that you have certain, whether it's horizontal or vertical formulas and all that you show on the plan sheet. But now with this model, it's infinite, the number of points that you're showing on it if it's like a roadway project. And so, with that, we're just very concerned with being able to hand that off. But that at the same time, the technology for creating these massive files, it's incredible what's going on right now. And I would say that the key here is hiring the right person. It's not so much finding that individual who is maybe an engineer by training or whatever. It could be an IT person. Is what we're finding is that we need a modeler who understands the whole psyche of modeling and knows the basis of it. So that's kind of been our experience, Terry.
Okay. So speaking of massive data files, I have a question that would relate to Sandy and John more so. These massive data files are getting sent across, the internet and things of that nature up into the cloud. And you all have branch offices. And so can you tell us what your technology issues are related to keeping your branch offices connected and hopefully collaborating with other offices. Sandy, could I ask you to start on that?
Sure. Yeah, it's so we still operate on all our own servers. We're running everything ourselves out of our Columbus office. We have not purposefully, for a number of reasons, gone into the cloud with that particular data. So in our situation with our branch offices, the impact really has been a speed issue. So really trying to make sure that we have not only access to the server data in a timely way, but that we have systems boosted to talk back and forth with those servers. So it's a little tricky in the sense of all of that network of data actually takes this tremendously long path to get from Columbus to, in our case, Charlotte or some other locations. It goes all the way out to Washington, D.C. and all the way back. And when there's been issues with that line, then we're down. And obviously, we've all experienced that. So we've had to have backup systems, server backup systems, and so forth to try to address all that. I can't say enough about the importance of a strong IT. I don't even go near the server room. I'm afraid to breathe on it because I'm afraid I'll mess it up. So that's their job. But I think from a technology standpoint, as far as where we go in the future with this, making sure that we provide them the same level of service as what we can provide to, quote, our home offices, not only pretty important from an efficiency standpoint, but also from an employee expectation standpoint. They certainly don't want to be in a situation where they're not able to work at the same speed and efficiency as everyone else. So we have to be very cognizant that what they need is important.
John, how have you been dealing with it?
Well, it's evolving for us. We're similar. We save things to servers in different parts of, for that part of it. We do have certain, we're using the SUNY, and so our projects are up on the cloud. But speed has been a big issue, particularly in a small office. How much are you willing to pay for adequate speed? So we've slowly been rising up to speed in all of our offices. And now I'll be a little bit out over my skis, but we're in January, and I think we may be a little behind on this, but we're going to implement I believe it's multi-protocol listing service, MPLS, that has a two-way tunnel to interconnect our offices to greatly enhance the speed. Because we share last year about 12% of our net revenue was done in a different office and generated the project. And so it's really important that they can act and they're not sitting there waiting for things to happen. So that's been a big issue for us.
Sure. How about you, Rick? Any comment on branch office technology issues?
Yeah, I mimic what Sandy and John say. We're all connected. About 15% of our work is in our office, and actually our biggest thing is we still have lots of air flights. The number one technology still is the airline industry for us, because we do feel that even though with the technology you can do FaceTime and all that, but we still travel a lot so that our people can be engaged in that human element, that we haven't quite figured out the technology on that side of the equation yet.
Good. One thing that we had learned, at least at my company, was that the size of the office is inversely related to the size of the pipeline into the office. We used to think little office, little pipeline, big office, big pipeline, but if you want to share work with a smaller office, they need a big pipeline. And we learned that the hard way when people were going home to do their work instead of coming to the office because we had a constrained pipeline. We have around a minute left. I wanted to give you all one last parting shot of saying, hey, this is what you think about technology. And Sandy, since we ended with you, could we start with you now to one last shot of saying, this is things you should know about technology in a professional services business?
I think it's kind of back to what I said originally. I think technology is a wonderful thing. I think that we are all on a learning curve every day, and I think that it's incumbent on us to stay ahead of that learning curve. I think we stand to learn a lot from the new graduates and have to give them the opportunity to help teach us and move us along. But I will remain pretty staunch in my position that we're in a client relationship business, and the human capital piece is equally, if not more important.
I would echo that, and on the planning cabinet, we're looking at, what can we do? We have to do technology. There's no question about it. But what can we do to get paid for value versus by the hour. So we're looking at things like that, and I think that's going to be a big part of this going forward. There's no doubt about drones and all the other things that we're going to need to do and more sophisticated. I personally believe that we're not going to replace engineers. Too much of what we do is people interaction, relationships, getting communities to buy into projects. That design part of it in the middle, that'll get highly automated, but the front end and the back end are still always going to be a people business.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. Our big deal, especially over the next 5 years, it's all about professional development. And we put forth a plan, a strategic plan to make sure that we're considered the consultant of choice for our employees and also for our clients. But that professional development, only one peg of it is about technology, of keeping them, they have great degrees, but keeping them going to the proper conferences, whether it's ACEC or Bentley or whatever, but then also that whole human connection of the visual side, the graphic side, the communication side. And I think that's really the challenge of our industry right now, is to keep that group of people coming up engaged and excited about coming into the consulting world that we lead right now.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Rick. So we now have time for some questions, and you can ask the panelists questions. Put your hands up. They'll come around with the microphone and ask.
Terry, over here.
Gotcha.
No, to your right, over here, Terry.
That right.
Okay, Clint. Great. So Martin Ford made a comment about revenues or productivity increasing, but the number of people decreasing. I'm curious from your all's perspective, as people are retiring from our industry and moving out, are you hiring at the same rate? And as your revenues increase, are you hiring the same number of people on a ratio basis? Or is what Martin said in our industry also true, that we're hiring fewer people and generating more revenue?
You want to take that, John? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
at this point, I don't think we're seeing that. I think what we've seen so far is we're able to do a lot more for our client. So I haven't seen a drop in our net revenue from employee is increasing, but it's not dramatic. And I think we've taken advantage of the technology just to do a better job and present more options to our clients at this point.
We have seen it. It was what I was alluding to in the beginning. We have definitely had an increase in revenue with fewer people. But I will also say that the kinds of hiring we do tends to fall in very different groups. So we have a whole field services world that we're hiring in, and of course the engineering world, environmental, and others. And we have a really big challenge where we have a difficulty finding people in both avenues, but for different reasons. And so we've got this odd dynamic going on where we are doing more with fewer, but when we are trying to hire, it's become an incredible challenge. And I think most of us in this industry recognize that is a huge concern going forward as we all move forward and retire, that we're just not getting the pipeline filled in either engineering or surveying. And I think we all have to be very, very strong advocates for this industry because it's a great place to be. There's great job opportunity, but filling the pipeline, I think, has been really difficult.
Yeah, for our firm, we definitely have seen less individuals doing quite a bit more in the last 5 or 6 years. It's so obvious for us. And I think the one area that we're really honing into is our backroom work that we do. Much more efficient, much less people. I'll throw out a number as an example. Back a number of years ago, we had about 35 corporate staff located in Kansas City, and we had about 250 people. Now we have over 800, and we have 29 corporate individuals, in marketing and IT and you just have to do that. You just have to be so much more efficient on the backside so you can really expose your people in your front room to the clients.
Back there.
Thank you all. It's interesting that in our hour and 45 minutes so far, nobody's mentioned the term big data. It seems every article I read coming out of McKinsey and places like that says there's a revolution going on, and if you aren't harnessing your big data, you know, you're going to lose out. And I don't even know what that means in the context of the engineering industry. I'm wondering what I'm missing. Can anybody on the panel share perspectives on what that means in the context of our industry?
Yeah. Go ahead, Sandy.
No, go ahead.
You know, just maybe to start that is
You
something.
take it.
Sure.
You know, the big data is, you know, from our perspective, our national presence of trying to get as much information to be used by everyone within the firm. So that's how I'm defining the big data is how we can take all the information that's locally, whether it's down here in Orlando or out in Santa Ana or out in Boston, whether it's about airports or airlines or freight rail or whatever, and all the information that's there, and then try to pull it together and make a lot of sense out of it so that we can have honed in strategic plans to move forward. Because I think with the whole thing with the big data, probably what we haven't quite figured out is how best to use it. And so that's probably what we need some assistance with.
Jay, you got a question?
Yeah. Sandy, you alluded to this a little bit. If you look at an org chart in your business, you've got, you know, the people in charge on top. But if you took the org chart and you turned it upside down, you probably have people at the top that are more technologically savvy and comfortable because they're younger and they've grown up with it. Are you doing anything in your companies to try and tap that resource and not just assume that the oldest person is the smartest person and that you might be able to get some ideas from those folks coming in on how to do things?
That's a great question. So this is going to sound like a little bit of a funny answer, but believe it or not, one of the things that we are doing is actually looking at the way our space is being used. So, you know, traditional engineering firm, we're in a building where we have a lot of collaborative spaces, and this is kind of funny, but every one of these open spaces was full of filing cabinets and old drawing files. And so about a year ago, I walked around our main building and I said, I'm done. I can't get rid of this stuff. We're blocking all these open spaces with this stuff. And so I gave everybody 3 weeks to clean it out. I was not their favorite person for 3 weeks. But here's the reason for it. It was because we were not using our physical spaces the way we should for collaboration. And what I was finding and talking to a lot of the young people in the company, we have a demographic, we have a tremendous amount of people under the age of 35. And in talking to them and how they wanted to work, the idea of collaborative space was so important. And while we had some of it, I don't think we were doing a very good job of emphasizing it. So we literally physically cleaned out a tremendous amount of the building and redid all these spaces to be truly more collaborative spaces. And I know that could be a little bit cliche sounding, but the reason for it was because it was so critically important for us to get them out from behind their computers or their smartphones and actually in these spaces where they're talking with each other, because the idea generation that comes from that with a lot of these younger folks has been pretty tremendous. So it's a funny way to answer your question, but the reality is we needed to do a better job making sure that those opportunities were occurring. And now that they are more frequently, I do find that they're more visible. They're literally physically out in the space working with some of our older staff, and you see a lot more discussion going on because we've provided the opportunity to do that. So it was a simple change, and actually it was the people working in the organization themselves that actually made it happen. We just had to facilitate an environment that promoted that.
Okay, I have a question, Terry.
Sure.
Back here. Okay, it's about a return on investment for use of technology. I want to pick on over here.
Way back there, Spiro, all right.
That's what I pay for sitting in the back of the room. So, in your last question about the evolution of drafting to CAD to BIM, you asked Rick of how do you get value out of this thing? And one of the areas that I wanted to explore, I'm going to throw a comment, perhaps get some reaction. Perhaps we as a community, we need to teach our clients the value of return on investment of a certain aspect of technology over the life cycle of the project. Looking at 3D is not just a static one-time application. It can lead into modeling for scheduling and construction, cost management, and then overall the life cycle of the project with asset management. And to the extent that we can make a better case for value derived over a broader range of the project, thereby increasing the value of the service and getting a higher return on that service for ourselves versus, we don't get paid as much. What feedback do you get from clients for topics like this, where you can actually convince them that if you spend a little more on the front end, not only you get better quality product, but you get a broader use of the tool over the 30, 50-year cycle of the asset?
All right, sure. Well, I need you part of my firm to figure that one out, because that has been kind of a conflict for us. I don't know about others. I love your term about life cycle. What we do, we should always be looking at the broader use of it, not just the initial design, but the whole life cycle of what we're trying to do. Unfortunately, even though we live in a QBS world, it's still defined as what is the product that you're handing over once you're done after a couple years. It's not over the next 5, 10 years. And so I think we need to come together as a group to really talk through that. And I think ACEC has been a really good forum for talking about that. And whether you look at it from the public side of things, unfortunately on the public side, we have on the political process, people are in for 4 years or 6 years or 2 years, and that's what they care about. They have real tunnel vision. And then on the private side, at least what we have found, we try to be the trusted advisor for the client to provide the service for the entire length of it. And we have not been as successful as maybe KCI has or Benesch or whatever. So I'm actually looking for answers from outside here as much as I would have the answers.
And I think you make a really good point. There's a dramatic difference between the public side and the private side. There's much more openness, particularly in vertical structures and other things, on the private side to provide value and become that trusted advisor. Even we both do railroad work, that's still closer to the public than it is to private. And the public side is just going to take an awful lot of education in trying to get best practices. And unfortunately, you're working state by state by state. And it's a big haul to get where we need to be as a profession to get paid for value.
Yeah, if I could just throw this out, when you talk about some of the trends in the business of going to 3P financing, and you see it's working in some areas and not in the other areas, the problem with our profession, unfortunately, is that we are too far down on the chain as far as making decisions, and by the time it gets to us, at times it's not a qualification-based selection, it is a price selection, because it's considered somewhat of a commodity in someone's view. I don't know whose view that is, Dave. But I think that's really where we have to start to kind of add that whole idea of the full value that we provide for the life cycle.
We had one more question real quickly, and then we'll be done. Go ahead.
This is for all the panelists if they wish to weigh in. A number of folks in our industry take great pride in being early adopters of technology. Others take pride in being cautious, wise, let's calculate the ROI and defend it. Early adopters versus late adopters. I don't really see much difference in terms of their success. I see extraordinarily successful firms on both sides of that. What's your philosophy? And would you rather be testing the beta version of the newest approach and not being incredibly challenging on demanding a quantitative ROI before you invest? Or would you want to see how this thing really works and you're not quite cautious about buying the next new penny that comes down the road?
So, Sandy, how about you? Early adopter or follower? What do you want to be?
Great question. I would say we're actually both. I'm not sure I could say we're black and white, one or the other. It sort of depends on what the ask is or what the need is. So in terms of systems, existing systems and adding to them, we probably tend to be a little more cautious. In terms of projects and actually client work, we actually tend to be a little more risk-taking. Trying to do things we've never done before, using technologies maybe we've never done before. So I think it's an interesting question in the sense of in that world of clients and projects and the exciting fun stuff, we probably are out a little more in front. but on like the Dell Techvision and the accounting and the HR systems, that we could talk probably about all day long, what works and what doesn't. We probably tend to be a little less risk-taking because of the fact that I think there's a lot of challenges there, frankly, and they do function to operate the foundation of the company, not so much the fun, innovative stuff we do.
John, you get the last word, and then we're done.
Okay, I guess we're very similar. I mean, you know, some of these systems are incredibly expensive to put into place, and so we have to be somewhat cautious about when we do it and trying to. We've done the same thing where we really manage our overhead, and the back office is smaller than it was because of the investments in technology, but we can't just, you know, plunk down $1 million without really thinking through it. On the other side, you know, as part of our strategic plans, we target areas where we think we can get an advantage, and then we'll invest technology and want to be on the leading edge for a certain, and I can't tell you what they are because I don't want you to get there first, but for certain strategic initiatives that we have.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Let's give our panel a round of applause.